Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Today, we are going to have a live session with London Foodie. We are going to talk about heritage, culture, identity, diaspora. So, stay tuned, and I hope you will like this live. Hello. How are you?
Good, you see your face.
Yes, same. It's nice to see you. I'm so excited for the live. Thank you again for
Me
saying
too.
yes.
Waiting for this moment for us to talk about all these
Same.
interesting topics. So,
It's been months we've been talking about that, so I'm really excited.
yeah.
So for everyone who hasn't watched live yet, we are gonna discuss identity, home, culture, diaspora, and many, many other things. The live should last 45 minutes to 1 hour, depending on how much we talk. But knowing us, probably an hour.
Yeah.
So, Leena, I'm gonna ask you a few questions during the live. If any question makes you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to answer. You can just tell me I don't want to answer, which is completely understandable. So, oh, hi everyone. Okay, so I would like to ask you a few questions about home.
Yep.
And the first question I would like to ask you is, how do you define home, and what does home means to you?
I hope my Wi-Fi is not gonna give up on me. But so home, like I guess the real definition of home, like if I were to open a dictionary and like read the definition of home, I think most people agree that home is a physical place. So, a house or anywhere that you live in permanently, and usually it's as part of a family, member of a family or a household. But for me, and I'm sure for you too and all the people watching this, hello home can also be spiritual, so it's not always a physical place. I think as long as you're in a place where you feel respected and people care for you, and you feel like you can safely grow as a person, I think that's the real definition of home. Obviously everyone looks at it differently. That's how I see it. So for example, for me, my family is home. I feel like if you put me anywhere, as long as with my family, it would be home. But obviously that's different for everyone. I don't know about you, but
there is no right or wrong answer, of course.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
don't worry. It's more a discussion than a yes or no MCQ,
Yeah.
But yes, I think I agree with you. I think as long as I'm with the right people, I will feel at home. I feel at home in London, but I feel at home in Morocco as well. I think
It could be family or friends, even if you have like,
exactly.
Live with friends, or your friends are your home. It could be people as well.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Said, and food as well. Yes, I agree. Actually, food can make you feel at home.
That's so true.
That's true. That's really true.
You eat a specific, like, whoa, that reminds me of home.
Yes, and so this leads to another question, because you said that for you home is mostly spiritual or with family, but is there a physical place as well? Like, would you say that home is somewhere as well?
Yeah, so I'm guessing a lot of people who are going to watch this live will relate to this, but I've grew up with kind of a mix of cultures, so I don't really have one physical place that I can for sure call home. But I feel like London is definitely home for me, because that's where I grew up, that's where I was born and grew up, and also it's so multicultural, and there's such a clash of cultures that, like, I feel like that's what I identified to most. There's like wherever you're, people from where you're from and relate to that and identify with that. So for me, that's home for sure. Yeah.
Yes. And have you always felt at home in London?
Yeah, I've always felt at home in London. It's it's a weird one because London kind of has, it doesn't really have a culture, you know. It's like it is a bit of everything going, but that's what I like about it. I know people might not like that clash of cultures, but that's what I particularly like about it. That's what makes it feel like home for me. So, but for other people, it might be different. I don't know how you feel about London, but because you live there too, so.
No, I agree with you.
But you know what?
Sorry?
You know what I mean, right? It's like,
yes, no, I know what
whatever
you mean.
From,
because
you'll feel it.
Yes, I checked a few months ago actually, and I realized that, well, according to many sociologists, London is the most multicultural city, and even before New York. And it made me realize how, you know, lucky I am to live here, because literally I met people from everywhere, I think. And when I say everywhere, it's for real. It's not even an exaggeration. And I actually love that feeling, you know, because in my opinion, to learn about a culture, you have to talk to the people that live in that type of culture, you know, not by looking online. Yes, online does help, but actually talking to people and asking them questions with limits, obviously, because there are ways to ask questions, but asking the right questions to the people helps you to learn. And I think that's how, and maybe you feel the same, but that's how personally I learned a lot about the South Asian culture, the Latino culture, and many, you know, Eastern European culture as well, and how like they're so different. Even though people think they're similar, yes, they are, but they're not the same. And that's that aspect I want to know. I want to know, yes, they're different, but why are they not the same? That's what I love learning about, and I find it so interesting.
Yeah, it's like in London, right? If you're Moroccan, for example, there's like Moroccan restaurants and like within London. So and that's the same for French, because obviously that's the culture I'm closest to. There's like specific French neighborhoods. People will know French shops where you can buy French food, that kind of stuff. And if you want to experience other cultures, that's literally perfect, because the best way to experience a culture, as you said, is like to experience it.
Yes.
And if you can't go there, if you can't go to the country, you can't go to the shops. There's so many Eastern European shops you can go in, try. And like, instead of like comparing other cultures to your culture, because that's just a source of prejudice and you're going to be so biased, the best way is to place yourself in the middle of the culture you're interested in learning about, and trying to understand why that culture does things the way they do. And like, once you understand that, it just becomes much more clearer, and you'll have a real image of it, and, you know, a respect for other cultures. And that's pretty much just cultural relativism, which we learned about.
Yes, exactly. I was gonna say it's cultural relativism.
You know,
you took it from me, but yes. Yes, exactly. I think you should never compare cultures, because there are no right or wrong way to, you know, practice your cultures and traditions as well. But I know that some people still do it, and I think it's something that is definitely going to change. I think our generation is more aware, and, you know, we're more respectful towards each other, I think, in our generation, because the previous generations were really different. But it's definitely changing, which I'm so happy. I'm so happy about that.
It's because most big cities, and actually smaller cities as well, but there's like more and more mixing going on. So
yes, literally.
Have faith in the younger generations. Generation Z especially. Like, I know, like, it's gonna get better, hopefully. Because as you said, aren't the most open-minded, but
it is changing. Yeah, it is changing. And can you give examples of your culture, and can you define your culture as well?
So I'll try. Okay, so like culture in general, right? We both, Leena and I both did the French baccalaureate, so we had like philosophy classes, right? So like, the actual culture and everything. The like classic definition of culture is probably like the set of norms and traditions that a certain population has. So in that sense, I literally could not give you define my culture. Like, my culture is a mix of like 3 different cultures, so
which is Yes, can you give more details on that? Because not everyone watching the live knows about
Okay,
that.
yeah, so my friends will know, but basically, the three cultures I identify with. So first foremost, it's the French culture. Both my parents are French. I went to a French school. All my friends, you included, I talk French with you all the time. So that's like my main culture. And then on my dad's side, I have Berber roots. So that's basically the indigenous people of Algeria in North Africa. And then I was born in the so I have like a bit of a mix going on,
which is amazing.
but that's what I talk about. So yeah, but yeah, so I don't really have like I don't really define my culture because it's just a bit of a mix. But an example, well, I could give you any example you want. I'll just pick a random one, which I really like, is architecture, because I feel like people don't often talk about architecture as part of culture, but
that is true.
It applies. In my case, like I have an interesting example. I don't know if anyone who's in this live has watched Emily in Paris on Netflix.
I did.
Did you watch?
I was
then
like,
you know,
so not Paris.
It's so stereotypical, but oh well.
Oh my god.
But you know that like classic French building type in Paris, yeah, like the very, very classic building type. That's called the Haussmannian style. So basically in the 19th century, Napoleon literally told his architect called Haussmann to like make all of Paris new again. So he decided to renovate the whole city, and they built new buildings. And that's the style that we know today. So it only took him like 20 years, but in the 19th century. Anyway, so that's the Paris style of buildings, architectural style. And then that spread to other cities. So you have that in Bordeaux and like big cities in France. And then I realized this not long ago, actually. So Algeria, which I have roots from, has been colonized by France. That's kind of a negative until the 60s. And if you go to Algiers, which is the capital of Algeria, you actually have that style of building, that the same you find in Paris. You can have that because it's been colonized. That aspect has just like, that aspect of the French culture has like made its way into North African culture. And it's not the most popular. But it's just to show that like architecture is just one of the examples. I could give you like 5,000 more examples of culture. The most common is food, for example.
That's actually such a good example, architecture. And this actually reminds me of something. So, well, first, sorry. What you said about the old buildings, we have the same in my town, in Casablanca. We have, the old town. And yes, we do have... I don't want to say pop art, but it looks very different from the rest of Casa. So when you go there, it looks, very like French, and it's really beautiful because the city is, it's like London, each neighborhood is different. But yes, so what you said about architecture reminded me of something, which actually not a lot of people know, but in Morocco, like we're very famous for mosaic, and in Portugal as well. But actually the reason for Portugal to be that famous is because when Portugal was colonized by Morocco, they have brought that culture of mosaic, which is called zelij in Arabic and azulejos in Portuguese. And the words are similar because, like many words in Portuguese and Spanish are from Arabic. And when I went to Portugal, I was visiting like, Porto and Lisbon, and I was like, this is so weird. It really looks like I'm in Morocco right now. And I read more about it because I knew about like this, exchange when this was like centuries ago that we exchanged all this culture. But I was just thinking how crazy it is that it's still the case now, that some people, they have like reunion and they paint on azulejos, and that's exactly what's happening in Morocco now. And I was just thinking how crazy it is because in Morocco we are aware of it, but in Portugal not as many people are aware of the fact that they probably have Moroccan roots and things like that. And I was just thinking how for me it's so important because it's, I don't know, like I always wanted to like do that DNA test and check like where my family is from and stuff. Like I really wanted to do it, but because my dad is from Fez and my mom is from Salé, which are two cities that have been colonized by Andalusia, so the old Spain. And I told my parents, I want to do the DNA test. Like, I want to know, is it really like in the blood? Like, what happened, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's exactly what you said before. Yes, it comes back to what you said. We have so many cultures in us, and we can't associate ourselves to one culture. It's too hard.
Yeah.
It's too hard.
Architecture is just one example, but there's like millions of other examples.
So many. But you are right. People not often think about architecture. So in all the lives we had before, people will tell me food, music.
Yeah.
Yes, I said food and music. That's the most common ones. But it's a really interesting one. So thank you for bringing this up.
Well, I'll just add one comment on architecture. I don't want to bore anyone, but basically, because architecture is like, it's, you know, food, you eat it, and then it's music, you listen to it, that's it. But like, architecture is there to stay until it's destroyed or whatever. It will be there for centuries and centuries, you know, and some architecture is so old and goes back to like thousands of years ago. So that's like it's a really important aspect of heritage and culture, especially later we're going to talk about like diaspora and stuff, but like when people move, the architecture doesn't move, like they'll stay, but then the people who move, they can build new architecture based off where they come from, which is what happens with, you know, many countries.
That's true.
So
that's a really good process. No, that's true, because you can move, but you cannot move all your culture with you. You can just move a part of it. So for example, you can move with your music and food, but you cannot move architecture. That is true. I'd like to ask you another question about culture, actually. So because obviously previously you said that you have 3 different cultures, kind of, and I was wondering, how do you actually navigate these cultural differences? Is there actually, do you navigate them? And if yes, how do you do it?
Yeah, I've learned to like not navigate them. It's very complicated. Basically, obviously, if I go to a country, for example, if I go back to France, which is quite often, holidays or whatever, when I'm there, I'll completely detach myself from the British culture just because it's not really applicable there, and I'm not that close to British culture. But I don't really navigate between them because they've just formed me. You know, who I am is those cultures mixed. So it's just a part of me now. I can't really like separate them anymore, but I wish I could, but that's just how it is. I don't know about you, like when you're in London, do you just like have everything mixed together and you just, you know, identify with that mix rather than like set cultures? I don't know. It's hard to explain, but
no, I think I know what you mean. Yes, I wouldn't say sometimes I'm one person and then another time I'm Leena B, you know, or like Leena C. Like I'm not like 3 different people. But I think London has changed me somehow. What I want to say is that even though it's only been 4 years that I'm living here, I still feel that London has had a big impact on who I am and on my culture as well. So Umaira said, can it be overwhelming to adjust to different environments and cultures?
I think we can agree on that one. Like for me, it was university because we didn't go to this. We went to the same university for our undergrad. We went to University of Nottingham, and it's not London, so you don't have that. Like, although it's quite an international university, but it is still a very typical British city. So I found it hard to that in the beginning because I felt I had to do British things to like fit in. But then I just moved on to that. I found my and you know, Umaira.
No, it's true, yes. But actually that's a really good question, Umaira. I think the problem is that, okay, so you move from your home country to this is how I think about it, like scientifically. I'm not saying that this is how I think, but you move from your home country to another country to study because you have more opportunities there, and then you realize that you still want to be connected to your home country. This is how I felt when I was in Nottingham. So when I moved from London to Nottingham, I felt that I wanted to stay connected to Morocco somehow, but at the same time I wanted to meet people from other cultures. So I think it was the thing that was hard was to realize in which an environment I was in, plus being connected to my culture, plus learning about other cultures. I think that's what was overwhelming. Not me feeling good in another culture. It was more me trying to do everything I wanted.
Yeah.
In terms of culture. So learning about, for example, your culture, and you learning about my culture, and at the same time staying connected. So that's why I think it was challenging. But
yeah,
you do adjust. And I think it's about time as well, honestly.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah,
that's actually,
I don't think you can adjust suddenly.
Yeah, like obviously I grew up, so like I went to French school, so everyone I knew was French pretty much. And then I came to university, and it was like, whoa, there's too much going on. Let me know, you know. So
yes,
it's tiring, obviously, because you're learning so much at once, but it's amazing at the same time because you learn so much about other people, how they do things differently, and new music, new food, all that. Yeah,
literally. And I think you are opening your mind by meeting people from other countries, and kind of opening your mind to the world as well, because you learn about people, and you learn about how you are different, how you are similar as well, what you are doing differently, in terms of traditions and everything else. So I think it is tiring, you're right, because you learn so much, but it is good. I don't think it's negative at all.
Yeah, but I feel like it's easier to do that in London compared to other UK cities, or like maybe like I don't know, but London is like a metropolis, so it's so much easier there to like learn about other cultures compared to like smaller cities. But obviously, the university we went to was quite international, so it was nice.
It was, no, I think it was quite international, but not as much as London. That's true. So let's move on to the third section of the live, which is about identity and self. So have you ever experienced difficulty finding yourself in the past, or even recently? I don't know, because we're not that old, but
we're talking like old wise women, but
like, yeah, I'm 50.
To be honest, not really. Like I've always been quite transparent with myself, like and I've always been interested in like what my roots were and all that. I've done quite a lot of reading on that. Like even during lockdown, I had so much free time, I decided to build my family tree. That took me like 2 months.
That's so cool,
like I've always been, honestly, if you guys ever have like free time, build your family tree. It's so worth it. It's so interesting. Like I had so many surprises in there. But that's just to say that I've never really had difficulty finding myself. But what I mentioned in the question you asked before is I think that's a problem. Anyone who's living in a place where their culture doesn't necessarily fit in, so that's like us at university basically. Like sometimes I get the impression that the only way to fit in was to do typical British things. That's the only moment where I was like kind of questioning, like, is like I can't find people like myself. What am I gonna do? But then it went okay, and I met you. I met so many of my friends. If anyone's watching, you guys. But so in that sense, no, not difficult finding myself, but more like difficulty finding other people who were likely to understand my culture, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. And do you think that, so because of that, do you think that somehow your culture and your heritage has had an impact on your identity? So on who you are, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Because identity itself, well, cultural identity, literally it could be any. So culture can can have an effect on your political views, your even stuff like social class,
Yes, it does. Yes.
your religion, like skin color, literally, and everything is influenced by culture to a certain extent. So in that sense, the cultures I grew up with, or the cultures that I've inherited from my ancestors, they've
Yes.
all in that way. So obviously I have different parts. For example, food will be most likely from this culture, and then political views from that culture, all that kind of stuff. But all of that culture is definitely an influencer of identity, I think. 1000%.
Yes.
Yeah, actually. What do you think about
Because
it? But
no, of course, because obviously not just one thing is going to have an influence on your identity. It's culture, heritage, family and things like that. So yes, you're saying it does have an impact, which I totally agree on. I just would like to ask you a few questions about diaspora as well. How do you define diaspora, and do you think it has ever affected you or will affect you maybe in the future somehow?
So diaspora, I don't know. Again, I'm thinking about our baccalaureate classes.
Yeah.
Diaspora is literally when like a group of people move from one point of the globe to another as a group.
Yeah.
So, that's like very commonly mentioned diasporas are like the Jewish diaspora, for example. That's one of the main ones. It's not affected me directly, apart from like the fact, because my parents are pretty much from like set points. But when I think of it, my parents did move to the UK when they were young adults. That's not really diaspora because it was just like individuals. It wasn't like a group of people. That's so
Yes.
like some basically migration in some way. But diaspora, well, people moving around is just so common nowadays. Like everyone is free to move wherever they want to. Well, most people are free to do that. So I don't think diaspora is really a thing anymore. I know a lot of people talk about like internet diaspora, like technological diaspora, because you connect with people from different parts of the world. But like traditional diaspora, I'm not sure if I could give you an example of that. Apart from maybe refugee crisis, which maybe Roots journal covers, but apart from that.
Yes. So last time I had a live with Artie, and we talked about that. We talked about diaspora, and she said something really interesting actually, and I would like to know what you think about that. She said that people like me, who come from another country to study in England, she counts it as diaspora, and somehow it has an impact on her because we meet,
Yeah.
And I was wondering what you thought about that. Do you think that somehow international students coming, well, not just students, but sorry, international students or families coming to England for better opportunities are part of a sort of diaspora or not?
I don't know. It depends how you define diaspora. I personally define it as when a group of people move to another country. So, for example, in the UK, you've had a huge Eastern European diaspora back a time ago now. But yeah, it's usually when a big population moves to another country. So I don't know if I would count students going to other countries as that, especially as you go for a few years and they move back to another country. But that doesn't mean that it's not like a great opportunity for students. I think international students are crucial to the UK. First of all,
I think
for
so
the economy,
too, yeah.
let's face it, for the economy of the UK, but also just to like both have so much to learn from each other. English people, well, British students can learn from other cultures in that way, and international students can learn about how it's like to live in England, which is or the UK more like, which is obviously I don't know. I feel like the UK is slowly declining, but for now it's still one of the most powerful in the world. So it's very interesting to have to see both aspects. Like I feel like we're quite lucky that we're like familiar with both sides.
Yes,
I think
lucky, yes.
very enriching.
Very
But
happy.
so if people have the opportunity to do that, that's really a great opportunity. But I understand that not everyone could go to different countries to study, obviously.
Of course, yeah, it's such a good opportunity, and I think, in my opinion, diaspora is never negative. So
Yeah.
whether if it's immigrants, or if it's students, or if it's families, or if it's people going for another jobs, if they have a better opportunity in another country, I don't think it should be a problem.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I don't want this to get political, so I'm not gonna go too far, but I just think that diaspora is never an issue, whether if it's, you know,
Yeah.
the famous ones you talked about, so the Jewish diaspora, for example. We can talk about so many other diasporas. I think they're never negative, because we never choose.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. Yeah, sometimes we have to live. It's not a choice sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't want, like, whether if it's for people who have to leave their countries for, you know, political reasons, but even for students, sometimes it's not really a choice. You just know you have a better opportunity in the Western world sometimes, and it's really sad, but it's the truth. So I don't think diaspora is ever negative.
Yeah.
And as you said,
It's definitely,
yeah, it doesn't affect you. Yes.
yeah. No, I think it can't be negative for the only negative aspect of it is the prejudice people have. So obviously people who come from other countries, they will, I hope not for them, but they will experience probably some sort of prejudice at some point because of that,
Of course,
like,
yes.
because of what we talked earlier, you know, people who judge other cultures directly by
Yeah.
comparing to theirs. So like they see other cultures and they're like, why do these people do that, instead of trying to understand why these people do that?
Why?
Because all the cultures,
Yes.
and there's not one culture superior to the other, you know, it's just they're all
No.
equal. It's just a lot of people don't try to understand other cultures, so that in that sense it can be hard for people who decide to move to another country, usually from
No, that's true.
people
Yes,
who move
and
to the world for
yes,
better.
yes, there is no like better culture. You know, all cultures are different, and I think that's the actual problem. People don't realize that. They think that some cultures are better than the other, or, you know, they're overpowering the others and things like that. That just, it's gonna change. I'm telling you. Like, my sister's generation is so aware. Like, she's 18 and she knows more than me about everything
Isn't
that's
you?
happening in the world. And I love it. You know, I'm really happy that they're this aware. And my food voyage has said it's best unless or until the people from outside overpower the locals. That's when it gets negative situations made fair. I agree. And I don't know if you're referring to Scandinavian countries, because I know they had so many issues. Are you referring to that? But anyways, if you are, I know what you're talking about. And I agree, but I think we should never forget what these people have gone through and why they have moved, you know. Yeah, so we should be careful, I think.
I think the problem is, you know, if someone comes in from another country, whether it's, you know, they're moving to a country for their job, they have a new job, or
Yeah.
education, or just to find a better life, you know, you don't know, it could be like one reasons.
No, yes.
If it's not handled well, then I understand where that person is coming from who wrote the
Me
comment.
too, yes.
But that's, again, not to get political, but that's the government's problem. Like, they need to give people equal opportunities, you know, because I don't want to go into too much detail about
Me too.
yeah.
I'm scared to go too political, because I have like very strong views on that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
If everyone's given an opportunity, then, you know, it can definitely be beneficial and very positive. Yeah, situations differ, that is true.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
many
you know,
cases where I've seen many cases where people move to a country for a better life, but then when they get to that country, they don't get the opportunity to, you know, blend in a new culture, and they're just kind of set aside, and that's not their fault it can be the fault of, you know, the government not including them. I don't know. That's how I see
Of
it.
course,
But
yes. And
yeah.
no, I agree with you. And I don't want to go political, but a perfect example to that, in my opinion, is France. I don't think they have included any of their immigrants at all. And I actually talked about it with one of my friends from Switzerland a few days ago. And yes, we were talking about how different countries handle their diasporas. And we realized that so many countries handle it so badly that what you said happens all the time. Certain people feel excluded, and then they went to another country for, I don't want to say for nothing, but what they expected is not happening.
Yeah, that's very common.
It's so common. It's so common.
It's not your fault. I think a lot of work can be done for more inclusivity. Hopefully the newer generations again. I'm putting all my faith in them.
I hope so, yes. And you know, I think like our generation already is really aware and quite open-minded. I don't want to say that everyone is, but a good 80% of the people I know, and I think it's the same for you, you know, they're very open and they know about, you know, what's going on in the world and things like that. It's true that sometimes they only are open until a certain extent, because not everyone can be open about everything. It's like me telling my grandma like things about the LGBT community. I don't think she will understand. But our generation is quite aware already, and very much more aware than our parents and than our grandparents. So hopefully what we can do is, I think, on the small scale, you know, doing things like lives like we are doing now and talking about it open, like freely, you know. There is no judgment in our conversation. We have like different opinions too. And, you know, teaching our kids as well, we can teach our parents somehow. I know so many of my friends who talk to their parents about things like that. I think you and I are like, I mean, it depends. Like,
my parents live
a very open speech now.
The UK,
yes.
So they moved when they were young.
There was, sorry?
Oh, the UK has so many. No, like what we're talking about, that's literally the case for my parents, because they moved to the UK for young adults, and they were like,
they were so
either for work, and then it was basically for better opportunities. Yeah,
exactly.
So it really depends. It really depends on the person, but
it depends. Yes, it's so relative. Exactly. Yes, it really depends on everyone. But I think I can even promise you that it will change, because I have a really good feeling about the next generation. So hopefully.
But it's becoming. It's everyone's moving to different places now, so it's getting more and more common to have, you know, multiculturalism is becoming more common. So I think that's why things are getting better, or like more open-minded.
Yes, and I don't know if you heard about that, but there is a word called intersectionality, and it's when so I can just give you the example on me, but I think you will feel concerned about that as well. So I'm from Morocco, but I speak French. But I was in a French school and I studied in England, you know, like all this intersectionality and multiculturalism as well is more and more common. And even some scientists said that in a few even years, like less than 6 years, something like that, people will not have one ethnicity anymore. It won't be possible anymore because everyone is mixing, which I think is so interesting. And we talked about that before, so...
But a lot of people don't realize this because, for example, it's like in America, people who say, "Oh, you're not American, get out of my country," people from the US. And I'm like, dude, you literally your ancestors come from Ireland or the UK.
Or Italy as well. There are so many. Yeah.
To America.
That's true.
The only people are the ones who've have become complete outsiders of society. You know, it's messed up, but yeah, more people are getting. It's like intersectionality, as you said, definitely is the key to things getting a bit better.
I think it's the new word, like for the next generation. everyone is gonna be mixed. I'm so happy. Like this is my dream happening.
Because people used to move as groups because transport was completely different back 100 years ago compared to now.
Obviously.
So this group because you go in boats and it's like huge groups of population would travel at the same time. But now you can literally take a plane and move to a country.
Literally.
Have the means to do that, and then you can literally start a new life anywhere else. That's why things are changing, because it's so much easier now to start a new.
Easier.
Lots of people are doing that, and yeah.
Yes, like movement has gotten easier physically. Like it's easier physically to move, and socially as well. So physically it's easier because of transport, and socially because, as you said earlier, it's normal to go to another country now. I would like to ask you a few questions about third culture. Do you think that you have a third culture? And if yes, which one is it?
We can link that to the intersectionality that you just mentioned. Yes. But for the viewers, if someone's unsure about what a third culture is, it's usually when a person grows up in an environment that's completely different to the environment their parents grew up in, usually a country. Yes. So, in my case, it's a bit of a fourth culture. Because obviously I have my French culture is like the strongest one, I would say, and then I'm still in touch with my Berber culture. So
of course, yes.
And then British, because I grew up in London, so I'm in touch with that. And then I just have my own culture, which is a mix of all three. So it's like a fourth culture.
A fourth culture. Okay, that's so interesting. Actually, that's really interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that soon that will become the norm, probably, to have more than one culture. At least if you, I don't know, it depends. But
Leena, what you said is so interesting. So your fourth culture is a mixture of your three main cultures, and you said earlier that your identity is formed by your cultures. So your fourth culture is your identity. You know?
Yeah.
Your much. Yes, that's so interesting.
You know how like a family has their like, oh, this is our favorite meal, like that we cook, whatever. Yeah. For me, that we go from like gratin dauphinois, which is like classic French dish. So good. So good. Then it go like to like chicken and leek pie, which is British. Then it could go to like felfel, which I'm not sure if you have that in Morocco. It's like it's tomato.
No, it's more Middle Eastern.
Dip. Yeah, they have one very specific, which is similar to shakshuka. I think it's called meshouya in Tunisia. Not sure, but it's called felfel in Algeria. Anyway, we call it
fefla. Like the one similar to shakshuka, we call it fefla, which means like pepper and tomatoes.
Yeah, it's like a cold dip kind of thing that you eat with bread and eggs and stuff. Yeah. And and for me, it's completely normal. You know, I wouldn't question any of these meals. I'd be like, yeah, no, of course. This is me. That's just one example. So yeah.
That's so cute. How has your British culture merged, actually? Because obviously you were born here, right? And you grew up here as well. Yeah. So I think this goes back to the previous question. Have you always felt British? And do you think it has merged like when you were a teenager, or have you always felt British because you were in a French school as well? So I guess maybe at a certain point of your life you haven't felt British.
Yeah, that's a weird one, because a lot of people tell me like, oh, so stuff like, why don't you sound English? Why don't you sound British? And I'm like, well, I was born in the UK, but neither of my parents are born in the UK. I went to French school, and French schools, you have school from like 8:30 to 5 or 6 or whatever. So I talked French at school, then I come back home and I speak French. So I never spoke English. When I came to university, my accent was so strong, and people were like, "What? Are you actually born in the UK? Like, this is a joke. No, it's not. Like, who do you think you are?" So it didn't merge really. The British culture didn't really merge with what I identified with until I came to university. But then it started merging. So stuff like sense of humor, for example, like I don't have an English sense of humor, but I don't have the really classic mean, dry French sense of humor mix now, you know? It's like my sense of humor.
No one. I think we have the same humor, so that's good. We send to each other's really weird things, but we both laugh.
Yeah. It's like not the French sense of humor, the English one. It's like, and it's like it's even with like North African humor, like it's all mixed together. It's a bit of a mess, but it's definitely merged now. That's over the past 3-4 years, I would say. But before that, I was not really in touch with it. Apart from like politics, obviously, and like the books I would read and stuff like that. I was politics obviously because I live in the UK. That's the politic I'm most inclined.
Yeah, close to it. Yes.
That's where I live, so I have to know. But yeah.
Well,
I don't know about you.
The accent is really interesting. What you said about the accent is really interesting. I have a friend who was born in London, and both of his parents are Italian, from the south. And you know, the south of Italy is very different from the north. And actually, when I met him, it was because I speak a bit of Italian, so I was like, yeah, like I want to practice, like let's talk and stuff. And he told me, you know, I was born here, and I was like your Italian is so good. It doesn't look like, and he was like, yeah, because his accent in English sounds Italian as well. And he was like, yeah, but you know, I was speaking with my parents all the time in Italian, so it's like what you said. He wasn't speaking English at all. So I find it funny actually that you feel the same about it. But even though you don't have an accent, I never questioned that you were British. I would never tell you, oh, I don't think you're British just because you don't have an accent. that doesn't make sense.
A lot of people a lot of people suspicious about it. But yeah, but some people it's like they have parents from whatever other country, but they were born in the UK and went to English school, so they're British school, sorry. So their accent is completely British. But
that's me when I have a kid here. They're just I'm gonna be there with my French accent, and they'll be like, "No, mom, this is not how you pronounce it." But to reply to my
because it means if someone has an accent, usually it means they speak another language or another dialect most of the time.
Yes.
Most of the time. So it's really interesting. I don't know the science behind accents, but yeah, it's like when I hear an accent, I want to ask, "Oh, where are you from?" But that's not really a question I like to ask that much. But
yes, it depends who asks the question and how you ask it as well. I don't care when people ask me when I'm from, but I know that some people get offended. But in terms of third culture, to reply to you because you asked me back, I think my third culture is England, to be honest with you. Because obviously
for a while now,
literally, because I do feel Moroccan, but to be honest with you, I do feel I don't want to say French, but I'll say just European.
But the like people who aren't familiar with the French curriculum, the French baccalaureate, it's very, very intense.
Very intense. And
you have a lot, even if you're in the science stream, I guess, you still have a lot of like history, a lot of philosophy, a lot of... So you automatically become knowledgeable on that, and that automatically becomes part of you, because education is a huge part of identity.
Like there are so many things that I love about the French culture, but at the same time it could be I want to say like, okay, not French, I'm gonna say Mediterranean. So I feel Moroccan, Mediterranean as well, because I feel really close to the Italian, Spanish culture as well, Cypriot culture too. And then my third culture would be British culture, because I've been living here since almost 5 years now. And there are so many things in the British culture that has changed me. Like, I can't even give examples. It's really weird to explain, but
I know exactly.
I don't even know. Yes, I don't even know any examples, but it's just, I don't know. I do feel connected to it.
Yeah, because it's not, it doesn't always have to do with where you're born. It's usually what you're exposed. And you've been exposed to all three, so that will have inevitably your identity.
Exactly.
The books you read, or like the stuff you hear on
Yes.
TV, the food you try, the politics you read about in the newspaper, all of that will change your identity. And so that your identity could literally keep on changing, you know? Like,
exactly,
as you live, the same. You're going to be more drawn to certain cultures. So yeah.
Yes. And this, actually, what you just said leads me to the last question. Because your identity changes over time, what, if this was possible, but what would you have told to your 10 years old self about identity and heritage, etc.?
Yeah. Do you mean like what I tell myself if I knew that my culture?
Yes.
I mean, I think the most important thing for everyone is to be open-minded, because you literally don't know what's going to happen. Like,
true.
Who knows? Maybe one day I'll get a job offer in another country and I don't have a choice. I have to go. I don't. That's just one example. Or like you meet someone, fall in love with them, and you move to another country. Like, this is a bit far-fetched. Like you never know. You never know what's gonna happen.
No, but it happens so often.
Then you come across a new culture. If you live there for a certain amount of time, that's gonna completely change your identity. Not completely, because you still have roots and heritage and all that from the past. But yeah. So what I would tell myself is, you don't know what's gonna happen, and keep an open mind. Because again, I'm talking about my parents, but my parents literally they never knew they were going to move to the UK and start their life there. Or like they came here and they were like, oh, I'm just going to come for a few years, learn English, finish my studies, and then go to France or whatever. And then they ended up staying here for years, and then I was born. So you can never know what happens.
You can never know. Yeah, that's true. It's you can't know what's going to happen. And that's the beauty of life, right? You can't organize everything.
Yeah. It's stressful sometimes if you like things to go
That's
a certain way. But that's what makes it so cool, is you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. It makes it beautiful and, unique.
We're being so poetic right now.
I'm so touched by my own. Sometimes I just look at the story, I'm joking. But yes, thank you, Leena, for today, and thank you for being so transparent about how you feel, and being honest. Basically, is thank you so much. It was a really nice chat. I hope you enjoyed it too.
It was nice talking to you, as always. We always talk about.
That's true. We always talk about the deep things. We never had just a random conversation, so it's really deep.
We start talking about something and it goes like.
It's like we open a door and then we're like, oh yeah, you know what? And then we just talk about something. But I like it. I like that. And it's good because it means that we are both comfortable having conversations like that.
Yeah, I think it's important. Obviously, like, we both do science-based degrees, so it's sometimes hard to touch with like all the sociology and like ethnology, anthropology, all that. But like, it's important to talk about it. I definitely like need to do more on it so I can like support arguments in the future. But it's very important aspect of life. So
I think it is. No, I think it is really important, and you can never stop learning about it. Talking about it. You can watch movies. I watch so many movies about things like that, like whether if it's about colorism, racism, anything. I'm just trying to always, be up to date, but it's really hard sometimes. But I think it's important. You're right. It's definitely important.
And more and more.
Thank you so much for today. I'll pause the live. If anyone has any question, please feel free to ask, or any comment actually as well. That would be nice. But the live will be on the page, and I will tag you too. Then you can repost it on your story as well. But yes, thank you so much. It was really nice.
It was nice to see you again.
It was nice to see you. But yes.
Oh,
Thanks
well,
everyone who has asked questions about what we talked and also who has made comments. I hope you enjoyed the live, guys, and I hope we'll have another live soon. I'll post it right now, so hopefully you can rewatch it whenever you want. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye, Leena. Thank you again.